We've done a lot of buzzwords today, and I saw a couple confused looks. And so I'm actually going to rewind a little bit, and let's talk about what BIM is. What it simply stands for is Building Information Modeling. Any building, information in the model. So that is not, I'll go back, that's not software. You can't call me and say, hey, Richard, I want 2 BIMs. Can you send them to me? That'd be great. I would love to do that for you, but I can't. So it's not any one software. Though if you go look up the term BIM, and if you come to my BIM session, I'll give you some fun ones. It was actually a term created by Autodesk many, many years ago when they bought Revit, which was a third-party company, and they introduced BIM, and it just went nuts. And if you go look at software out there, there's been software that's been doing BIM before the term was even created, before Autodesk had anything to do with BIM. So, number one, BIM is not Revit, it's not Autodesk, it's not any specific software. It is implementing, I guess, and exposing information from your architecture, and that really becomes central. And one of the most important things about that is, are there any designer drafters in our crew? No, that's wonderful. Raise your hand. Justin will raise his hand. I appreciate it. So I got 2 people where a lot of the business falls on your shoulders. That if you draw it wrong, and we drive civil, field and collaboration, purchasing, estimating directly from that model, it's wrong downstream again and again and again. So while Jeff said it won't necessarily fix every problem, but it will also expose problems that you didn't even know that you had in your company yet. I'll go back. It will expose problems that you don't even know that you have in your company. Estimating's perfect. Jeff's laughing because we've been through this, and going through this right now is doing that. The more you want to drive from that model, the better we have to be on the front end. So building information modeling, enabling that original model to drive marketing, design, structural engineering, estimating, all of these pieces that are integral to your every single day that drive down to the very bottom, the P&L, profit and loss of what comes out of every house. So if we're going to spend a lot of money up front, and it's only going to save you $10 a house, and you're only building 100 houses this year, maybe it's not worth it. If you're going to save $500 a house, and we're going to build that home 100 times this year, probably a conversation we should have. But we got to figure out, is the investment up front worth the back end? That's what I said before, it's not for everybody. It is not, and it won't be. So I'm going to talk a little bit about IPD. Just because you haven't had enough acronyms today, I'm going to throw another one at you. Integrated Project Delivery. Now, BIM is the model and information from that, but it enables IPD, Integrated Project Delivery. Now, what that means is previous process was, here's my architecture, and then I sent it over to an engineer, and they made some changes, and they sent it back, and then I changed it again. And you go through, and then you send it to an HVAC guy, and then you send it out for bid to your suppliers, and then they ask questions. So it's here, 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 and everybody gets to touch the model in their own little space for that week or two as it goes through design development. Awesome, right? It works well, it's what we're used to. But if we can figure out something wrong with engineering when we're doing real design development in the very beginning, in the first couple of weeks, then we can change it here, and it cost us 10 cents on the dollar, rather than figuring it out and costing you $5 on the dollar. So let's find and enable project design, design development, and all of the associated suppliers closer to the front end of the process. Because once again, if we're still doing red lines and fuzzy lines, and we've got some basics, if we can enable a civil engineer or a structural engineer, or even my supplier for my lumber, to say, hey, if you move this a little bit, you could get better. Probably my favorite example was the kitchen. So the builder said, we're going to put down linoleum, which comes in, I use a bad word, y'all don't use that stuff at all, right? So 16-foot bolts, right? That's what it comes in. So their kitchen was 16'6" wide. Nobody even bothered going back to the supplier and say, what does this come in? 16-foot pieces. And then so they were taking 16 feet and ordering 2 rolls and throwing away 15.5 feet in a bin. It's like, I would figure that out, but they had built literally hundreds of houses the same way until we involved them closer up front in that process. So integrated project delivery. Am I talking too fast?
No, go. You're on a roll.
But that leads to construction documents. that leads to better communication with the field. And I keep using Jeff as my example. I keep doing that. Their plan set initially was very general, but it's probably what you're using right now, 3 or 4 pages. Walls, doors, and windows, good luck. We're hoping that the guy or gal in the field does a fantastic job of interpreting what we think we might want for my building and put it in place. But you are relying on somebody in the field that you see every once in a while, or a supplier that comes to your job site once in a 60, 90-day process to hope that he gets it right. Let's not do that. Let's control our design up front in the plan set and give them, you can kill them, you can do it too much, but 15 or 20 pages. Here's the actual layouts of the joist. Don't just hope that the guy shows up and puts them in the right place. I want to rotate these here. I want to rotate these. So give them the correct and precise information in the field, so when they put it up, you have a consistent product. They don't make a decision at the very last minute and cut your bottom cords. Has anybody ever had their bottom cords cut when they show up with eye joists? Chris is smiling and laughing because he's been there. Because you didn't do the HVAC design up front, and they took a chop saw. You should ban all chop saws from all of your job sites, please. So that we can do that we can have that conversations. That we can, maybe it's what we do is we rotate those 90 degrees so they're not cutting through 14 eye joists and cutting our bottom cords. What if we just rotated our floor so they could just run all the HV ductwork down in line? Makes sense, right? But if you don't do this and design charrettes up front with your suppliers, you will never find those things out. So Scott Saddam is here. I don't know if he's actually in the room. He does a fantastic job with design charrettes, bringing every single supplier involved in a house, and you throw a set of plans down on the table and say, go. One by one by one, we all go around the room and argue this plan set. You'll find some amazing things because the framer doesn't talk to the HVAC guy, or this person doesn't talk to this person. Plumbing guy is not talking to the framer. They're just coming in and cutting up what somebody else did before so it fits for what they need. So I'm rambling. So, BOM. BIM, BAM, BIM, BOM, BAM, BIM, BAM, BOM. So, building information modeling we talked about. Bill of materials. So there's 2 things. One, a fun thing from the BIM model itself is it will give you a list of materials. But it'll give you exactly what it takes to build that house exactly. That's not waste, that's not warped wood, that's not dented wood, that's not the guy shows up on the job site and drops it in a pile of mud and you got to send the whole bunk of wood back to get a whole new one. That is none of that happens on a regular job site. But this is exactly, if everything was perfect, what it will take to build a house. If the estimators, like 90% of EPOs are estimating errors, as an estimator, I'm sure there's some in here, if you think all that your blocking was going to be cut out of 14-foot sticks, and you ordered 14-footers, and they cut all your 14-footers to be studs on your walls because they didn't take their 92 and 5/8 to be your stud walls, well, guess what? Your estimate's wrong. Your estimate wasn't wrong. The application of such was. So bill of materials is a list of exactly what's in there, and then you have to be on top of material management. So BOM is driven from the model. We can put in the pieces, we can tell you exactly what it takes, and we can count discrete parts, and then an estimator can be a material manager. You're not going repeat, 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 repeat. How many times can I copy this same thing and do it 100 times in a row and spend 2 weeks, 3 to 5 days usually, on average, getting this together for it to be butchered in the field? And my favorite term is I could do a wonderful bill of materials, but if I have a wood butcher in the field, I'll be wrong. So define what you actually want to count, and how will you count it? So as an example, we'll go through for a certain builder, we'll go roofing. If you're going to count decking and felt and nails and shingles and everything else that has to happen on that, even ply clips. I don't know if you guys use ply clips, no matter what industry or what area you're in. We can count all those wonderful pieces, and we can draw all those wonderful pieces. Like physically put in those little ply clips between each piece. But is it worth the time to put that in? And then how are you going to count it? Maybe you're better off doing a very simple thing. Here's my square footage of roof. I'll do shingles. Square footage of roof divided by 33.3. Estimators are smiling. And that's how many bundles of shingles that I need. Is that enough, or is that correct enough to get there? And how much waste do we add on top of that? Are you doing a starter shingle? Do we add an extra bundle? Are you doing a ridge cap? Maybe we count that separately. how, or define what you need to count, and then we're going to define how we count it. Because once again, on the ply clips, it might take one of our crew an extra day to put in every single possible ply clip. And we're going to count it, and it'll be wonderfully precise. But if I'm really at 0.5% or 1% off, and I can just take my square footage of roof and some real simple formula, you're better off doing that. So how you're going to count. First, what? That's almost reverse engineering. There's lots of purchasing people in here. That's what we actually start with when we sit down with somebody. What are you ordering right now? And how do we reverse engineer that back up to either put it in the model or come up with a formula for such? Right? What's the takeoff on that? What's the time investment in BIM, or what it is when I just say, I'll just use this. Here's a quick formula. So what your partners can provide. A whole lot of people do BIM and BOM to enable testing out your partners. We'll say confirmation. That's a great first step. Your siding guy, and trust me, I hate siding takeoffs. Let me repeat that. I hate siding takeoffs. I do. But if your siding guy gives you a list of stuff and you have no idea, you're 100% trusting. Do you go out to the job site and look at the trash bin afterwards? How much went in there? How much went in the back of Johnny's truck to go home to the next job site or somewhere else? That's material management. You don't, you're trusting, so there's no test. This is a great litmus test. We can do some very basic. You can ask supplier, give me some information about it, give me my square footage of this, link the J channel, however you want to do it, and then we can give you some basic information out of here so that you can litmus test your suppliers, just to confirm what they're doing. You'll be surprised at how many are 10, 15, 20% that they factor in for their own waste that you pay for. If I could put $100 back in your profit in your pocket for every house, is that worth it? Probably. But also look to your great partners. They will give you wonderful information. And a lot of times they'll share how they're doing things. And maybe you can improve your models, improve your architecture, improve what you're doing and how you're doing it. How am I doing on time? Perfect. I'm almost done. So, always the final question is, what is MyTech doing about it? It's kind of interesting is kind of what's MyTech been doing about it. So we talked a little before about Sapphire structure. So that is what most component manufacturers are doing. It's a wonderful tool. You can actually put in lateral loads, dead loads. It will automatically size your headers, your beams, recommendations for top plate or VTP. Should you go doubles or singles if you want to play around with it? I don't recommend singles, but hey, everybody has their own thing. We've been doing that for over a decade. So we've been taking those flat 2D AutoCAD plans and drawing them in a 3D model so that we can put in a load and automatically size everything from top down. They've been framing these 3D models for over a decade. So we've been doing it for quite a while right now. Now the viewer, does anybody use the MyTech viewer, the Sapphire viewer? There we go. Thank you, Katrina. So this is, if you ever wondered about your field of what it frames to look like, what the frame is going to look like, your supplier can do that. I've got a crew that can do this. And we'll send you back a 3D framed model that you can share out, and on their iPad in the field or even on their phone if they want to zoom in and out, they can see exactly your intention and where things and how it's supposed to be constructed. You're eliminating those questions. Most people, this crew can understand from here to a 3D model. There's a lot of people that can't translate between flat and the 3D world. Let's spend, once again, 10 cents in the office to do virtual construction here in a 3D model, not $1 in the field for somebody to tear it out because we built it wrong. So MyTech has been doing this for over a decade. What we're continuing to do as the trend moves more and more to the BIM world is tools are rising to the top for acceptance, and it's actually in different markets. So what tools do we work with and what tools can we work with? Happens more and more often. I think we've mentioned before the Revit plugin. Autodesk is a $6 billion machine, marketing machine, driving into the market. The home builder market generally lags by years behind the rest of the commercial world. So right now, according to Autodesk's, different things that are out there in a variety of magazines, we'll, once again, tomorrow, 85% of commercial projects are touched by BIM in some way, and a majority of those are in Revit. Less than 13%, according to last year, of residential projects are touched by Revit. or BIM. But that doubled from the year before and doubled from the year before. So we are working more and more with tools in the BIM world and providing you back smart information. Once again, previously, my tech crew, use this in-house to design your trusses and get your webbing. We can put in those loads, we can optimize those kind of things, but it wasn't always available back to you. Well, now that information is back to you. Let's put it, once again, we talked about IPD before, let's put it back in the model. Let's get the 3D pieces together. Let's do collision detection. Let's get Chris on the phone and say, okay, give me my 3D layout, because you can't get all your HVAC stuff in 3D. And I can go click clash detection. Well, guess what? All my webbing from my trusses runs right through the middle of HVAC work. I need to call the guy and have them redo the webbing, not figure it out on the job site. So we are enabling you and also your suppliers to build better homes and hopefully put more money back in your profit and your pocket. Okay, I rambled and I kind of went off the tracks, but I tend to do that. And so I'm gonna stop. Do you guys have questions? Or you're so, see, I even walked around. You're so excited. It was wonderful. Fantastic job, Richard. We'll see you tomorrow.
I'll add a couple of things. The Sapphire Viewer tool is free, and you can download it, and it runs on iPads. And we have done case studies of builders who are using the viewer to fly through BIM models and actually share those with their subs. And it has a gyro capability. So we actually have, if you go on the website, you see some documentary videos we've done where the Sapphire Viewer is holding up the viewer and looking at the framing that's right there and comparing the aspirational drawing of the virtual frame to what actually got framed. So it has a high degree of utility. Secondly, I'd point out that probably the fastest growing part of software right now for my tech is, the Sapphire Suite, which you've heard about, is Sapphire Supply, which is now being given to, or at a very low cost or often no cost, to lumber dealers. So the same BIM model that you're using to push onto the marketing website and giving to your code officials is the same BIM model being used by the component manufacturers. It's the same BIM model and the bill of materials coming off that on a lot-specific basis that's going to the lumber dealer, who's coming back with either a price estimate for you or using that bill of materials to stage deliveries. So you see that MyTech is just going farther and farther out with the Sapphire Suite and bringing a kind of utility to every different practice around home building. All right. Just a couple observations.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, sir.
Questions about BIM, bill of materials? Let me ask this question, which I don't know the answer to. If you create a BIM model in Revit, can it be read by other BIM originating software systems?
So it matters what the tool is itself. Everybody has built their own proprietary little thing. We're doing our best to support as much as possible. But there's actually a tool called Navisworks from Autodesk that I can bring in anything in 3D. If it's truly built in 3D, now sometimes you have to adjust it, their scale's off, or 0 zeros at a different location. But with Navis, I can pull in anything that was drawn in 3D and push them together and see how the complete model looks. So your HVAC design, or your supplier, or your architect, or anybody else that you're dealing with, even your 2020 guy that's doing your cabinets, we can pull it all together and put it in a single model.
Mm-hmm. Great. Just a show of hands, how many people are using BIM models now in any form? A few hands, not a lot, maybe 5 or 6. How many people plan to go to a BIM environment? An equal number of 4 or 5 hands. Okay, very interesting, great.
That's it. Thank you, sir.
Thanks very much, Richard. Great job, appreciate it. I'm shaking your hand.